All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome to La Plata Electric Association May 21st Board of Directors meeting. Let's go ahead and start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's see. What do we think about the agenda? Everybody happy with the agenda? If so, I'll take a motion. If not, we'll modify it. Fuller. So move to accept the agenda as is. Second from Rachel. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. All in favor of approving the agenda as it stands, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions. Okay, we have an agenda. Next item, safety moment. All right, it's spring. It's really exciting. It's almost Memorial Day. To me, that means it is barbecue time. So I'm going to give you a safety moment about barbecue. I know most of you are thinking that safety in barbecue means don't burn the barbecue chicken. But in actuality, I'd like us to be sure and focus on other safety tips around barbecuing, which is there are lots, but one, turn your propane off after you use it. And I had another good one, but who's got one more good barbecue tip?
Remove grease so you don't start fires on your wood deck.
Thank you for the fireman. Thank you very much. All right, we'll consider that our safety moment for the day. Moving into member comment and concern. We have no one in the room. Do we have anybody online? Would anybody online like to make comment during member comment?
You want me to start with the
Preamble.
Yeah, the rules.
Well, if we don't have any, I don't see any hands. So we'll go ahead and move past member comment. Thanks. Agenda item 3, consent board items. Any clarity required on that before we, Tim?
Yeah, I didn't see anything about policy 112 and the change in there. Can you pull that so we can
Sure.
Okay, so it's been requested that we pull, it's item G off of the consent board items. And so we'll do that. And then if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to approve the consent board absent item G. Dan?
I have a question. Looked like there was four or 5 pages of new members plus the other. How many of these members are dropping off? What was on that date?
In the performance statistics, things like 300 and some is our net gain.
For the month?
Whatever time period. Sure.
it was 100.
They think we're not going to.
You asking about the net change in member for the month? Is that in the performance statistics? And I find it out.
All right, anything else? I need a motion to approve the consent agenda without item G. Moved by Tim, second by Rachel. All right, any other discussion before we vote on that? Okay, all in favor of approving the consent board items without item G included, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Abstentions? All right, then let's go ahead and loop back to item G. Tim, rephrase, question, concern, discussion.
Yeah, so I had to change the policy and I did not see what that policy change was in the board packet. Did I miss something? So could we just refresh what it looks like?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't answer that earlier.
It's all good.
So we scroll down a little bit, just a little bit further. All right, you see an asterisk there after at least 45 days. And this is what's currently posted on our website. And then scroll down to the bottom, you'll see what the asterisk refers to. And say that On June 8th of 2023, the members approved an amendment to the bylaws to amend Article 15 to require that a written petition to amend the bylaws be submitted at least 60 days prior to the meeting of the members at which the amendment is to be considered. Therefore, the 60-day deadline from Article 15 prevails over the 45-day deadline in this policy. But this is just, we just need to bring the policy up to conformity with the bylaws. So that's all we're doing is changing that 45 where the asterisk was to 60 to match the bylaws.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks for bringing it up and getting clarity on it. So then, we will need to,
I'll make a motion to approve.
yeah, okay, thanks. Move to approve that change to policy 112. Joe, I got you as a second. Any other discussion on that change? Okay, all in favor of making that change to policy 112, raise your hand.
Aye.
Right, that's unanimous. Okay, on to quickly, assuming you're ready.
Yes, sir.
On to CEO and staff reports, Chris.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Board members, gonna do a slightly truncated version this time, but wanted to start with our initial slide of the dashboard and review our key performance indicators. Next month, you will see an added safety line, which will be lost time incidents. We feel like that is a more insightful and informative safety measure. So you'll see that added for the June packet. I'm pleased to report we had no lost time incidents so far for all of 2025, including the great month of April. So you'll see that slight change on this chart for June. But you can see,
Thanks for adding that.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a more important indicator for the board. And if you look down this chart, you'll see the one that has the yellow on it is our cash reserves. As you've heard from Patrick, especially the FAC members, we are very carefully managing our cash to minimize any borrowing costs. So we drew that down very purposefully. We're under our ratio in this short period because we didn't want to add on extra interest costs with short-term lines of credit. So very much a affirmative decision or a decision there on cash flow management. So that's why we're at the 5. The 5 is actually a little bit higher than we forecast. So we've done, I think, a good job this month of controllable expenses are well under budget. So that gave us more cash reserves. But you can see on the other major financial indicators, debt financing, MDSC, equity, et cetera, we're in a very solid position. And if you benchmark that across our peers in the region, that looks very, very positive. So not only our own goals, but also peer group analysis, we're in a very solid financial position as we end the month of April. On beneficial electrification, we got got the data in time on the EV sales. So that has been very positive. We're well ahead of our goal. And that is, of course, all positive news for the co-op and for our members who are taking advantage of the various programs that we're offering. Continuing to see strong adoption there compared to our plan. And then our uptime also really positive. A little bit of color there. We, of course, had a few outages in both counties over the course of April. Mostly, well, almost all of them are either a tree from outside the right of way falling or a crispy critter. It's kind of one of those two things every time. Jerry and the team have been doing a great job working with Dan and the engineering side to put more protection devices in place. We'll have a little bit more for you on that in June, where we made some additional investments. We kind of, looked at cost benefit. Some of these protection devices are expensive, but outages are very expensive. And so I think you'll see continued improvement there as we make some of those additional investments to reduce interaction with our furry friends or feathered friends in some cases. So that takes us through kind of key performance indicators. I did want to highlight just a couple quick things from the rest of the slide deck. If you go to slide 5, really. Oh, sure. Yeah, Tim.
Since you were on outage,
Yeah.
the major outage restoration time,
Yes.
the line is page 33. in April, it showed 131 and the goals 120. So could I just understand, did we exceed that goal for the year by that outage of April?
That is a good question.
The average will go down, late, through the years, we experience more major outages.
Okay, so we're looking at that 120 as an average for the year.
Correct.
I just wanted to, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions on this initial? Yeah, cool.
Real quick, you mentioned that the average is from a tree outside of our right of way. Is that on Forest Service land or public land? I mean, private land?
Yeah, good question, Jared. Do you?
It was on private, anything outside of our right of ways is the member's responsibility. We can assist. And when we assist, we mean we can drop spans of line for them, take outages on members just to make it safe. But when they do drop the tree, it is their responsibility to take care of the wood, all that, so we don't clean anything up. Now, we are currently working on a program because on an improvement process, mitigation is becoming more popular, which is a great thing. And we would like to do more to help the members. And so we're considering a number of different options where it would be a benefit to both them and us. Where we might be able to take, might be able to assist them with a tree outside of the right of way, in trade for taking a few inside of it. So that's what we're looking at.
So does that program include kind of pinpointing to the member that this could be an issue for us?
We do that anyway with our tree trimmers. They mark any hazard trees and they will contact the members, in person.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Great question and discussion. Well, with that, let me hit just a couple of other quick highlights before I wrap up. If you go to the slide number 5 of the dashboard, you'll see a really wonderful news that we got around $2 million and change award from Colorado Department of Local Affairs. This is a federal block grant that was given to the states through previous legislation. And we were successful in the application process with the state granting agency, in this case DOLA, and a $2 million grant to improve our energy storage and resiliency. This is from the bipartisan infrastructure law, so the one that was passed in 2021. So it took a while, but we were super excited to get this grant, and very competitive process at the state level. Very oversubscribed, meaning lots of great applications, and we were very pleased to win that. So the net for the membership is a very valuable asset in a 4 megawatt battery, which would be 4-hour duration. And that provides us a lot of flexibility, especially as we go into SPP starting next year. So really valuable asset that we're going to get a huge amount of help from the state to get that in place. Tim.
So is that equipment that we will own, or how does that work?
No, so our approach, and this will be finalized as we finish off the project planning, but the proposed approach that we'll bring back to the board for approval is that we would actually buy the service and not own and operate that battery.
How does the grant get applied to that? Who supported it?
Yeah, I'll turn to Dana.
Yeah, that took some very interesting, I'll say, grant engineering by Dominic May. They did a really good job on preloading. You have to use it within the first 2 years, and preloading the tariff schedule to us, the tolling agreement. So it's very heavily loaded in the first 2 years. They apply the credit during those 2 years to even out the cash flow, so that in the end, it looks like a tolling agreement that's about 20% lower than we get otherwise. A few other utilities have tried putting some other proposals past and didn't work out nearly so well, and they were only able to utilize a much smaller portion of the grant than this approach here.
So we pay it through that grant, through a rate to the provider, front loaded, that then later goes down to a below market rate.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, and so, yeah, to emphasize that point, we're gonna get the full value of that $2
million, because of that structure.
And we'll learn later the term and length and all that.
Oh, so he asked most of the questions I have, but the other one is, do we meter that energy that comes from the battery? How does that, yeah, I'll turn to Dan for that one too.
Yeah, since this is a capacity product, it's less about the kilowatt hours, more about the kilowatts. And so we pay on a kilowatt per month basis, like a demand charge, essentially how that rate works. And that just gives us unfettered access. We pay for the energy that goes into it, and we get the energy that comes out of it. So that's the wash on the energy side, costs in there as well. But what we're paying for, what the rate is based on, is the capacity it can deliver. And so if there's a failure in the batteries, or they can't deliver all that capacity, then that's not something we pay for. We pay for the actual deliverable amount.
Okay, and then they refer to it in here a few times as a microgrid. We're kind of working that area into a microgrid.
We'll say microgrid ready on some of these things. There's a lot of controls and other protection schemes that go into place with that. So this is setting us up for success with a microgrid at a later time.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions. Just where is the Shenandoah? Like, where is it physically located on our map?
Shenandoah's in Virginia.
We're on County Road 141 and 125.
Yes,
Ah,
it's a shortcut that goes from Wildcat Canyon Road over to Hesperus. That road.
okay, we're talking about this. And then I think the other question, curious about how you mentioned 4 hours, like for how many, to translate that into application, like for how many homes or what footprint?
Sure, yeah, so Dan, I got that right, it's 4 by 4, so the total capacity, right, you fill it all the way up, and you can pull 4 megawatts.
Five megawatts times.
Oh, yeah, so it's 5 and 5. So, and then it's a 4-hour duration, and so we can discharge that battery for that full 4 hours. But you're asking how many homes would that serve?
Yeah, if like I were to talk to somebody on the street, like, wow, what that could serve if we were to run it for 4 whole hours would be
Yes, so
free or rainbow, like what?
yeah, on the Shenandoah substation, there's 2,800 homes. And 80% of the time you could run that whole substation, you know, so there's times of the year where the load gets so high that maybe you can't run full hours, 4 hours,
That
but
makes sense.
most of the time it would be able to power those. So just call it, 2,500, 2,800 homes. Yeah.
Awesome. And then how long does a battery, this is my last one, how long, what's the lifespan of this type of a battery?
Yeah, we'll have a 20-year contract for this, and it could remain longer than that. So we want to have a buyout provision at the end of our contract, and so desire to do that, or maybe we're just done, you guys clean it up and get it up.
And I will say, from batteries that have been installed in this type of configuration around the world, there's some great case studies from Europe and Australia, as well as the US and Canada. There's strong evidence to show that these batteries are going to last well past 20 years if they're carefully managed. And we've got great software now to make sure we're not having any physical damage to the batteries as we use it. I think it's going to last well past 20 years.
Then, sorry, this is one last one, sorry, about member engagement. When I was at Green meeting, I think they were talking about this, right? 41, that's your area of greenish. And there was concern about fire. So how do we manage for fire with these kinds of?
That's 12, John. Step 1, we
Bring your.
They will be doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah, since this is actually in the Durango Fire's district, we've engaged Durango Fire. They've been looking at, I'm sure you're kind of as well, looking at what this is bringing to the area, just lithium ion in general, and so we've got some good sessions scheduled already. John, we'd love for you to join in on those as well. Just to start talking through some of these things. They've got some knowledge base, we've got knowledge base, we're bringing the vendor in as well, having open discussions around this before we really get started rolling.
And I will say that back to some of those case studies, the kind of cell by cell temperature management has been the key over the last 5 years of drastically lowering any fire risk. And so I would say some of the older types of batteries that were first installed 8-10 years ago did not have that. We'll have great temperature management here. Yeah.
And we did have a discussion about this with T a couple months ago, and they basically said that the safety construction is much more robust than that fire in California was.
Yeah, that Moss Landing was pretty old technology. And I think, you know, what we're gonna be buying here will be the latest and greatest and significantly different risk profile.
Moss Landing, I mean, to go just one step deeper in the Moss Landing fire that is widely held up as the problem child. When they did the root cause analysis, there were so many failures of engineering at that time. They stacked the batteries, they pushed them too close together. They tried to create such density in that area that when they looked back on that, they made so many mistakes in that system. We would never do that. Nobody would ever do that today and follow that pattern. I think fire safety is way lower than it was even a couple of years ago.
And that process right there actually changed confinement stuff, which
Set out.
those barriers that are in place, in wildland, we work to do a line around something or structure fire, not have the next exposure. And that's probably the greatest asset that is there now, is that when it's maintained and cooled or not allowed to overheat, I don't know that it's cooled, but even with something that gets away, whether it's concrete or what the structure is, they're contained.
Yeah.
And that's enormous headway on.
Yeah.
Now it's not true.
That was not true then.
Yeah.
And it is now.
Yeah, great point. All right, yeah, I appreciate this discussion. And for the board members, you're engaging with your constituents. It's great information to share how much things have changed. Yeah.
So lots of lessons learned. It's still a risk as any, and we always manage our risk.
Yeah.
Great. I have a question about the battery as far as how SPP considers capacity from battery. Do you get 100% credit on that?
It's not 100%, but it's a very high percentage. I could look it up. It's in the all text rate.
Okay, so it's not, and is there, now there's been some talk at SPP lately about it's not as valuable a capacity. Is there a risk that they're gonna lower that percentage of credit to us as we go into SPP?
It can travel lower as more and more batteries come onto the system that focus on a certain time frame. But let me find some information on
I
that.
appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, well, I appreciate this discussion. This is pretty exciting, and this battery technology as we integrate it into our system is going to be very valuable going forward. And this is a great chance for us to do it with the state and federal support.
Woo, woo.
Yeah. All right, let's go to page 9.
Chris, I have one quick question. So the construction of the communication line between LPEA and Southwest Power Pool, is that just like a dedicated line or?
So, yeah, I can let Drew give us more color commentary here, but basically SPP requires we have 2 fiber connections to make sure that we have redundancy. We had one, we needed to put in one additional one before April 1st of 2026. It basically involved about 150 feet of tunneling under our driveway to get that second line in, but Drew, anything to add?
Yeah, I think you hit it perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so fairly straightforward, very, very simple. Couple $1,000 or.
I wasn't sure if it was
Yeah, no, just a little extra glass between here and the street. All right, let's go to, was there another?
I think Tim.
No, Joe asked it.
Oh,
Just answered.
Okay, yeah, thank you both. All right, so it turns out we are the GOAT. A huge thank you to Cindy brought some goats. No better way to engage kids under 18. I'm not even gonna say 10. It was literally everybody under 18 was excited to see the goats. And so we set up a little mini petting zoo right next to our booth at the Earth Day celebration. And here's you can see our setup there. Had the F-150. The F-150 actually powered the ice cream truck. And so they didn't have to run a little genset.
Oh, cool.
Which reduced the noise and the pollution from the event, which was really fantastic. And everybody got cold ice cream. So, yeah, the F-150's got a big battery. It worked out great. But you can see here a couple of the images from that. So a huge thank you to the team for pulling off a really great booth in Durango and in Pagosa. So Holly, I know you had got everybody together. I think all the directors from Archuleta were a part of that and had staff assistants. So I'm really glad we could be part of both of those events. Yeah.
We didn't have a goat, but we had the goat.
The goat.
We had Dan was there.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember your staff member. Cliff?
Alex.
Alex.
Alex, thank you so much. And I really appreciate them doing that.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, note to self, if you're trying to engage 8 to 18-year-olds, bring some goats. 3 to 18-year-olds. All right. Really the last thing to mention in my report, of course, happy to take any questions about any part of it, but I just want to mention a few things in the wrap up of the legislative session. I got fairly engaged in about 3 different bills that were moving at the end, really trying to provide direct kind of technical input into those processes. 2 of those bills didn't make it. One of them modified on using state right-of-ways for transmission lines. So we got that bill into a great place for co-ops across the state. But I would observe it was a relatively light year for energy-related legislation, and expecting some big proposals in 2026, and I'll be heavily engaged on our behalf and through the summer and fall on helping to shape those proposals. So more to come for the board in June. Got some fresh ideas that I'd like to present in June to get your feedback on how we can do a better job advocating at state level and at the PUC when we need to. I'd say we're under punching our weight right now, and I would like to be on the other side of that as quickly as possible. So more to come in June, but just to say we had, I think, a good chance to weigh in at the end of this last session.
I had a question kind of adjacent to that. I saw you went to DC with the NRECA.
Yeah.
And just following the state or the House budget process right now.
Yep.
Is NRECA lobbying on our behalf to keep IRA funds in place? Like, I just wonder, like, we seem so misaligned in a lot of places. And I was wondering, you know, how reconciled that, what was effective, what was not effective, you know?
Yeah, a lot of several, good. I appreciate you bringing up the DC trip. I learned a lot in kind of how NRECA operates, how NWPPA operates, what their capital program looks like. To answer your question directly though, NRECA is advocating for continuation of the IRA tax credits. They are very adamant about direct pay. Are folks familiar with direct pay in the room? I mean, to me, this is one of the most kind of, I hesitate to say this, but this feels no brainer to me, because if you don't do direct pay, you're basically transferring 20% of the value to Wall Street, because somebody's got to soak up the tax liability and then claim it, and it's 20 to 25 cents on the dollar ends up going to Goldman Sachs or one of the brokers. And so direct pay is how a nonprofit like a co-op can utilize these tax credits without having to give up a huge amount of that value. So for rural America, it is absolutely necessary that they continue direct pay. I'd say we've got a long ways to go yet on that reconciliation bill. I think the Senate is likely to play more of the good cop, if I can put it that way, on this set of issues. And NRECA, NWPPA working hard to maintain those. And I'm also advocating directly to the Colorado delegation on our behalf on those very issues. And I think it's those stories of like, what does this mean in La Plata and Archuleta County? What does this mean for your members? What are the dollars and cents? What does it do to cost of power? What does it do to the financial health of rural co-ops? Those are the stories I'm really trying to make sure our delegation understands. And I think we have a very receptive audience from CD3 and from both the Senate offices. Yes.
Well, Rep. Hurd was a co-op lawyer.
He was the outside general counsel for DMEA for many years. So yeah, he gets it real quick. Yeah.
And we can all call too and echo and hear our story.
I could not agree more.
If you were ever gonna call.
This is, right now.
And you can talk to their voice.
What did they actually?
That weirdly little technical thing that is hard to communicate is enormously impactful economically to this community and
Yes.
communities like it. It's not just solar, it's all the pictures up on the walls.
Yeah.
Like, that money is flowing all over America, but they put that in there as.
So again, a long ways to go. I think you'll see continued adjustments to the reconciliation package, especially as it gets to the Senate. But to your point, everybody in this room, please contact your representative and senators. They need to hear it. And it's, hey, I'm LPEA board member. That is super important here. So take 5 minutes, write an email, do a call, makes a big difference. Yes.
And to that point, I know we've struggled to get local press coverage on this, but is this one we could get out and get to, again, in more of a tangible story that the everyday public could understand, so they can start adding it to their list of things they're calling legislation on the.
Yeah. The Durango Herald is down, I think, to 2 reporters now. They just lost, Ruben just left. And so, yes, we have struggled to maybe get the coverage we would like. And I think we're really gonna, so sort of initial announcement, and then there's finalize the agreement, and then, we'll have a ribbon cut. We're gonna try to get as much press on this as we possibly can. Because it's a great story. And I think your reminder is such an important one, which is, hey, what is this? This saves the average family in Durango $5 a month. We'll do the math to figure out the value for the system and value for the membership, and put it in that kind of kitchen table frame. Yeah. Colin?
Yeah, on page 6 of that report, the road ahead, it has, for our break period with during April to June 2028. Can you clarify that? I thought it was going to the end of 2028. That contract only goes to June.
What's the final date on that, Dan? Which page?
Oh, we're on the
Duration of that contract.
So when we did the confirm, the EEI, yes, went through 2020, but the confirm, we got down to the narrower window of the pricing, and that service goes through the end of 2027. Everything should go through the end of 2027.
So they have here June of 2028.
So let me double check on what you're seeing that where?
On page 6,
Yeah, I'm just making sure we get the date right.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
Thanks, Colin. We'll double check that right now. Thank you.
Yeah, 2 things. If you wanna contact Jeff Bird's office, you have better luck with the DC office than with the cell phone. 2, you said something about email them. And you also said let them know we're LPEA board directors. And Graham, I'd like to hear from you, emailing from our LPEA.coop addresses. And you can get back, I just wanna, I think we need to, I mean, I always do it from my proposed baking company, so I've got my
So,
business.
Small business
Small
now.
business, but
so
Tim?
I've advocated almost daily on this topic as well as others. And I mentioned that I'm from a co-op in Southwest Colorado. I do not name co-op because my understanding is I'm not representing the entire co-op. Unless we take a vote, I can't speak for the entire co-op. I just say, I'm a board director on a co-op. I know what this means.
that's it.
Please be sure to support it. And, but I'm a little wary of you.
Yeah, no,
Unless we as a board want to take a vote.
Yeah.
That's all I.
Yeah, this is a great point, and just get this process right, situations. Yeah, I would say, I guess I felt like NRECA has a clear position, and UPDATE, the groups we're part of has very clear advocacy on these topics. And so I was just trying to support that, as the CEO, but this question is really important.
I'm just wary of.
Yeah. All right, we'll do some digging on that and make sure we get it right.
Just to pull on that thread a little, I'd love to have a formal statement from the board, formal.
Resolution.
Or the resolution.
Is that something the board, you want me to prepare that for June? So that, sure.
I mean, they'll probably vote this week, but it's gonna go on for a while.
Well, yeah, this is gonna go on for the rest of the year, so.
Yeah. No, I mean, if it gives you a better tool to say, no, we're on the record.
Right.
As a unified
Yeah, and then it makes it really, it probably makes it very easy then to use your LPEA email address and say, hey, our board passed this resolution. Yeah, okay, be very happy to get that ready for consideration at the next meeting. Yep,
In the meantime, just telling you from a,
go up in Southwest Colorado.
cowboy, and do call.
Yep.
And then this is just one, again, how do we use the tools we have at our disposal with CREA? Are they, again, just, I was thinking about, okay, the Herald has no reporters, well, the Colorado Sun still has reporters. And that they could cover CREA elevating this and then also mobilizing little local chapters.
They
if you will, little
did a
boards.
lot to coordinate the whole DC tour period, so, in my report, the NRECA has a whole bunch of talking points.
Yeah.
But Colorado had 5 specific ones pulled out, and that was one of them.
And so was it though just a delegation going to DC? Or are they putting?
We had 12
putting things-
or 14 cooperatives have represented 45 directors from the state win.
Which is awesome. Are they also coupling it with more?
Like,
Organization.
social, I don't know what they're doing on social media to tell you the truth, or something like that. I don't know what they're.
Mark Jaffe from the Sun did write on this topic, and I know Ted, you've done some interviews. I've been asked for input, so there is some press on this. The relationship with CREA, though, I'm not seeing a direct thread between the Sun article, CREA. So
Oh, just they had.
Yeah.
To get it out.
yeah, and I'll circle back next month on kind of the compare and contrast. How the DC visits were set up. I'll have more for board as we look at our state and federal advocacy setup. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Sure, great. Moving along.
Are we finished with the dashboard? Is that what you were saying?
Oh, that finished the highlights that I had for you. I'm always, of course, happy to answer questions if there are items.
So could I ask one question?
Of course.
So, what page it is? It, be a trusted community partner.
Page 8 or the first page? 7 or 8?
Seven, page 7, thank you.
Yep.
It said something about converting accounts into standalone accounts. I wasn't.
Oh, the first bullet there.
There's one, member services teams successfully completed a large account-specific project that involved converting nearly 2,000 accounts into standalone accounts. And can I get a little context on what that means? I'm not quite.
Yeah, I've got an educated guess, but let's see if anybody does these all that.
I think it's what we refer to as a standing order. I think it's when the landlord is there. Does that sound right? Was that where you were going, Curtis?
Yeah, that was my understanding. So yeah, landlord tenant, getting that very clear. The tenant has the account and has ownership of the account, direct pay, set up on Smart Hub, et cetera. So the MSRs were working really hard in April to do those cleanups, and we got through 2,000 of them, which is really terrific.
And was this initiated by landlords or by LPA? I mean, it just seems like a huge amount. I don't think that's just one.
Yeah, this is a very concerted effort to get through, this work in the month of April, and to get those accounts, set up correctly.
And is the context that LPA is encouraging landlords to break out accounts, or I just don't know the background of why we're putting this effort in.
I think it's more of a default, when the tenant drops off, that the service goes by default back to the landlord. And making sure the system is ready to handle that appropriately, as opposed to it dropping off and the service being disconnected. And then your refrigerator is not being powered anymore and it's all moldy. Sometimes the landlord doesn't know when the tenants leave, and things like that happen. So I think it's more of a fail-safe thing.
Okay.
I understand.
All right, so it's not something that we're doing to promote beneficial electrification or energy efficiency or anything. It's more of an administrative aspect of making sure somebody doesn't lose electricity when they need.
Getting landlords to pay attention, basically, so I think it's.
All right, thank you. So the context.
Rachel.
Curious if the CRMs have, wait, CSRs.
Nobody can hear you.
MSRs.
I'm curious if the CSRs have had a lot of feedback on rates or changes in bills. Is that what you expect?
Yeah. Amanda, so I went to a couple, they do a stand-up meeting once a week, and I've been to a couple in the last month and a half. I did not hear that.
And then I have one other comment on the dashboard. And that was just, I was looking at the beneficial for the rebate program. And I know we've already looked at that for next year. And I recall that y'all had contracted to do an assessment of rebates and identify best bang for our buck in terms of supporting the beneficial electrification goals. One of the things that, this is just my own personal experience in trying to shift over and electrify, one of the biggest barriers has been upgrading my electric panel. And that there are no supports out there for that, with the exception of what was supposed to be coming out of the Colorado Office of Energy, which is and seemingly perpetually stalled, I think, because of what's going on federally. So just, I don't know,
Yeah.
a thought or a notion for everyday folks, like that is the bottleneck.
Yeah, there's a barrier. Danny,
Yes, and we do have benefits for smart panels and going through that, which is more of a control to keep you under that size. So if you have, there was a prime example on County Road 203, electric vehicles, solar, hot tubs, blah, 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 you name it, they had it. And this smart panel just ensures that when one large load is on, I'm not trying to charge my vehicle at the same time and control it, you're able to keep that 200 amp panel.
So that's awesome. My guess is that's a fancy house. In normal people houses, what I learned is I have 100, like I have a 1995 house. I have 100 something.
Service.
Yeah, and I can't even sustain one thing. And so can a smart panel help me?
Yes.
Okay, so, and then this would be another thing, when I talked to the electricians then, who were gonna do all this, they didn't know about that part. So that would be,
There's a whole nother story behind
Okay.
that'd be
okay,
much to get into.
so
right now.
just story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, awesome to bring it up, because this is like, we're talking about all the good things that are happening, but also where are the bottlenecks, where, and bringing that up, I know you know about all this already, but I think it's nice to bring it up from a member engagement standpoint. Like, what am I seeing as a bottleneck? What are the people I'm talking to seeing as bottleneck? They may or may not even be real bottlenecks, right? But if we don't talk about them, we don't know how to navigate around them.
Well, let's put numbers to it. For a tiny 1,100 square foot townhomes, to buy my little furnace and just replace it with gas was gonna be 4,500, I think. And then to do the heat pumps, it's jacked up to 16,000. And then the electric panel upgrade was 3,000 to 9,000. So,
Just through, and my, yeah.
so.
I'd love to look at your service, particularly my guess is you really don't need a service side.
But I did talk to the people. But anyways, it's just interesting.
All right, we better
Yeah, we can
keep
move.
on moving along. I know the staff has, scheduled a very important meeting right after this meeting with the intention of making me keep things on time, so I'll try to do that. But yeah, any last call for anything on the dashboard?
Including the appendixes.
Yeah, might as well do it now.
I don't have anything, just
Thank
noting
you.
that.
Yeah.
All right, then, moving on to the board action section of the agenda, starting with committee on policies. Walk us through it, Nicole.
Sure. So we had, typically our COP meeting occurs the Monday after our board meeting, but because of Memorial Day, we actually had two meetings between our last, we had two COP meetings between our last board meeting. So that's why you'll see two reports in there. And we actually have two recommendations that have come out of the May report. We had in April, we had the member who had the proposed bylaws, Heath Rowe, came and spoke to us about each of those proposed bylaw amendments. He was kind of giving a little bit of color to it, and it was just information gathering. We weren't really debating the merits of it. We were just trying to learn more about what he was trying to accomplish. And then after that, Graham did an excellent memo for us that gave a lot of history and, you know, how this would align with state statutes, you know, what we've done in the past. That's in there, the member proposed bylaw amendment or member proposed bylaw amendment memo. And then the following meeting, we made it a 2-hour meeting. There was a lot of prep that went in before. It was a very efficient meeting, good discussion. We came out with a recommendation to the full board to not advance any of the bylaw, proposed bylaw amendments. They were unanimous, all 6 of them, minus 1 on executive session. There's 1 dissension with Kirsten. But otherwise, we were all in alignment that for the reasons that are outlined there, we don't think any of them should be advanced. So that's on the floor. I guess we'll go through that first.
Go one at a time. Yeah, right. So coming out of committee, that serves as a motion, doesn't require a second. So, you know, open the floor for discussion on that. I would just start by saying thank you to Nicole and you know, policy and Graham, especially for the, you know, the tremendous amount of effort and work that went into this, and for being willing to take it on at the instruction of the full board and coming back to the recommendation. I also want to point out that, you know, and you spelled it out very clearly in your memo, you know, that this is about bylaws, not about what we should do, what we shouldn't do. It's about whether or not we should propose amendments to the bylaws. And I think that was very poignant, kind of viewing it from that angle. And you know, certainly Mr. Rowe pointed out, you know, I sat through the discussion with Mr. Rowe and he pointed out a lot of issues and concerns and thoughts and good thoughts. And but I think from what I'm hearing from COP, it didn't rise to the level of this is something that should be modified in the bylaws. Doesn't mean that these things shouldn't be considered and pursued going forward. It also doesn't mean that you know, members in general lose the ability to still utilize the petition process for getting proposed bylaw amendments on ballot. So just kind of want to set the context for what action we would currently be taking in voting on the COP's recommendation. So further debate or discussion, Tim, you're first.
Do we really need a vote? Since it's like a vote of negativity?
Yes, policy 112 indicates that selections are to advance as presented, to advance as modified by the board, or vote to not advance. It specifically says you need to vote to not move them forward. So
we're saying that the process of 112 was followed still.
We
assigned it to a committee.
Yes, but ultimately it's the board's decision to assign. The delegation was to the committee to review and come back with a recommendation. Wasn't delegated the entire authority to make the decision.
Did we waive our policy in the last board meeting? Is that what you're saying? We waived following the policy in order to put this to front of a committee to come back with a recommendation? Are we in fact bound by that policy? Did we
I wouldn't say that we waived the policy by doing that, right? It sort of is silent on that, right? The policy indicates that the board will make a decision on this, and the board will be making a decision here. If it doesn't decide as a board to continue these questions, it would, you know, this is now pending because it comes out of committee, is pending as a vote on voting to, it sounds almost like a negative, but the vote that's pending would be to not advance these bylaw recommendations to a vote of the membership. And
thank you.
Fuller, you're next.
So right now I'm gonna vote against this. And first, I'd like to thank you for commemorating you guys for work. Obviously, there's a lot went into that. I think out of the 6 of them, there's only one that I have an issue with. The other 5, though, I hope it is still brought up in the committee of policies. because there are some good points there that could be addressed on policy instead of amendments to the bylaws. The one I have an issue with, and the reason I have an issue is talking to members, and I talked to quite a few members. This is the biggest complaint I have, and that's conflict of interest. And I think that one, the eligibility one, I would like to see us dive in deeper to see if there is room for an amendment change. So that's why I will vote no on this, the way it stands right now.
Yeah, good, thanks for the input.
And my understanding, just sort of procedurally, I think, was that we were gonna go for issue by issue, right? Or we're doing a slate? Okay.
Yeah, Graham, this
Doing a
is, the
slate.
recommendation is to not advance.
Okay.
So that's. I mean,
Add the slate. Okay.
Yeah, so it either passes or fails. If it fails, we'll take it up in a different manner.
Mhm.
Any other discussion before we move to vote? Here's that.
You're
Mark
good.
will be in. There we go.
Okay.
Fully.
So I did dissent on one of the, during the committee, it was on the executive. But I'm for most of the non-action, so. For, not non-action, for the.
Not to advance.
Not to advance, thank you so much. So I'm just trying to think this through, and I appreciate your patience and help me think this out loud. So, can I pull one?
This isn't really a
No,
consent
it's not
agenda.
really
It
one.
sounds
Okay,
like
yeah,
a
it's-
pending
yeah, okay.
motion is.
Okay, so then I just need to decide if one, if not liking one, is gonna make me vote against the whole thing. Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else?
Just, I'll note that, we tried to document what our thought process was in this, and we felt like it was really important to get back to Mr. Rowe about where, you know, to validate some of the concerns that he raised and let him know that it's being considered in a different, you know, in policy consideration. So just want to make sure that we did close that loop, him personally as a member.
Say you did.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I'm just, we've got some public hearing for the record if folks aren't looking at the packet. But to Kohler's point, I really appreciated the memo that Graham's policy team put together, looking at past action of the full membership in amending the conflict of interest policy to allow to strike former language in recognition that we have changed the business model of the grid, and so could very well produce and sell electricity, solar panel, or maybe in a different territory or different habitat here, actually brings value versus doesn't. And that we still have measures in place for genuine conflict of interest to be discussed and addressed. So just for that was my understanding of the memo, and I appreciate that.
All right. Last call for discussion before we go to vote on the recommendation from COP. Okay, all in favor of the recommendation coming from COP to not advance any of the member proposed bylaw amendments? Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Keep them up, please, for count.
5, 6, 7, 8.
And all opposed?
1 and 2.
All right, that's 12 of us. All right, thank you for going through that process. Thank you for getting us to the end of it. Like I said before, it doesn't mean it's the end of discussion of these topics. It just means it's the end of this process for this member proposed change. Oh, yeah, Tim?
So, given that there was some question around conflict of interest, the same. Discussion, maybe it was executive session.
They were two different ones, just to clarify, yeah.
So, you know, I would hate for us to get next year. Yeah. Same situation, last minute. Would be useful for president of the board, to take a task. And maybe a different president who knows.
This may impact that.
That office to take, or maybe it's the council.
Yeah.
To take a look at, is there a need, and should we advance anything in terms of a bylaw amendment within the timing that the board can propose before the next day?
I will take that action, assuming I remain in this position, and otherwise I think you should bring it up again.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
I will add it to the list of recommended actions for board improvement we have going.
Sorry.
Thank you,
I-
Vice
I-
President
hard time.
Landis.
It'll be on the bottom of page 10 or,
Yeah.
sorry.
That into improvements, recommended improvements for board. That's what she said. Did you see that, trouble?
Let's, Nicole, on to the next COP, potential action item.
Okay, after the third month of going through all 102, is the functions of the board of directors. We have finally got a version we'd like to recommend for adoption, or we have recommended for adoption, so that is on the floor. Thank you to all those who contributed online, and or if there's any discussion, hear that at this time.
Yeah, go ahead and moderate there.
Okay. Oh, yes, Tim.
So first, thank you for sticking with it. On the other hand, I don't think just because 2 revisions have gone through that just cut it off. I made comments along the way. Those comments were dismissed by the committee. I have no idea why at this point. One is the role, we define the role of the board of directors, I think in this, with respect to hiring the CEO, but we did not. As far as I could tell, because I don't have a clean version in my, it's all still marked up. There wasn't a clean version there, so I don't really know what for sure whether it's in there or not, but that the dismissal is also a role the board plays, and it's not called out. And council referred it to another policy, which I went to and could not find where that was called out either. So I would like that to be brought back in. The role board plays, it's not just hiring. Second is the idea of succession planning, which in there is only a report from the, asking of the CEO to provide a report on succession planning. And again, the only comment I got was the committee said they didn't want this. So I would like to bring that back into conversation, because we have gone through 2 CEOs within 5 years, and in both cases, we were not prepared to, and I was on both those hiring committees, and we were not prepared to ascertain whether there was a development process for any staff to potentially take over that role. I think that is a fundamental dereliction of our duty to not ask them. So please explain to me why those 2 are out, not in, and then
Sure.
that can inform my vote. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for contributing. So we are keeping the succession planning in, and we directed CEO Hansen to get us a report by the end of the summer. Discuss that has never, no one on the COP had ever seen one. So we're like, this doesn't need to be a huge document, but we do want to know that you've thought about it. In case you went to the lottery,
No more hit by the bus.
One lottery.
Well, as long as it's an electric.
So that did stay in. Yeah. So then the second issue was actually part of a bigger committee on policy issue that the next secretary will hopefully address, which is, what we found with these bylaw amendments. I feel like what Mr. Rowe pointed out is that there's places we are not following our own bylaws, and I think part of it is because there's duplicative policies. There's it says it in one place, to do this, it says in another place to do this, and then we change it in one place and don't change it in the other. And we also, I think because the policies have become so big and cumbersome, they're no longer effective. Essentially, we took out one line out of this function to the board of director that was essentially saying the CEO can ask board members for advice. Does that need to be codified? It's gotten to the point where it's so prescribed, it's watered down. So we felt like, with I believe you pointed out in it before where that we firing of the.
So what
what 104 sort of says is that there will be periodic appraisals, right, of the CEO. And that they will work together with the CEO, Human Resources, and the board to come up with an appraisal process. As far as termination is covered in the employee contract, right? And so it'd be very difficult to have a policy that could potentially be in conflict with the employment contract that the CEO has. It sort of has different terms for cause termination and non-for cause termination and things of that nature, and be cumbersome to sort of have that try and mesh up with a policy.
But the line in the policy just defines a role. Doesn't define a process.
Yeah.
That role only speaks to hiring. It does not speak to the role of dismissal. And from my perspective, that's something that's should be there. Otherwise, remove the role altogether. You know this is a policy around our roles. It doesn't necessarily. I'm not asking for a process. But if we don't call out that role to somebody later in a dismissal, say you didn't have that authority, and sue us and cause us money or any other kind of.
Sure.
So
I think that's fair enough, right? You know, just sort of making reference that the board has the authority to terminate the CEO in accordance with.
Well, it's already in the bylaws, which I didn't check. But it was not in policy all over. My comment.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. So I agree with Tim that that's a sort of an important but ultimately small point. I've sort of lost the plot line here. What problem are we trying to solve here? Or is this just a general ongoing grooming of our policies, which is sort of a never-ending process?
So that it's the latter right now.
Okay.
But in the process of the latter, it provoked the question of the former, which is, do we actually need to have AI/an intern come in here and look through all of our policies and have it only say in one place that we're supposed to hire the CEO? And clean it up. I mean, I think they could be half as long, and maybe we'd actually read them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So this,
okay,
what
so
we're
just-
voting on
It's a
is
different outcome.
And so the vote here is to,
we cleaned up a few of those places, like where I said where we're like, does this need to be codified?
Okay.
That was, but we're not, this is not a vote on the bigger question of, do we want a strategic overhaul of our policies?
okay, yeah, because I mean, Ted did a year and a half of this when he first got on the board.
And got a third of the way through.
Yeah, I made a lot of progress.
You know,
It was a
picked
fair-
off the low hanging fruit, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest.
Okay. Fair enough. I have no further questions.
Okay, I think I saw Rachel. Was your hand up? Rachel?
I was just gonna add on to what Tim had brought forward, that in addition to I guess securing our authority, this is also one of the few places I feel like we send new board members to learn their job. And I know I struggled, no one actually ever told me that when I started this role that you're supposed to read all the policy. And I know I struggled for years to understand what we could or could not do, which felt like a cuckolding of work. So I think in that sense, it's also really helpful just to have a clear, whether it's there or an actual job description, it's not there. It's that people come, not been informal, what's going on.
Agree, and I think in that line, we should offer, because some people would really, I think they would benefit from having a new board member when they come on. If we can offer them printouts of this stuff that are like, not all the policies, but if there were a few policies that are like, hey, new board members should read this, and if you like printouts, I think that's something we should offer them, along with the coffee mug and hat. Okay, Kirsten?
Yeah, this title is responsibilities of the board, functions of the board of directors. And there's a lot in here, folks. And some of it we are kind of lax on. So I really appreciated the opportunity to dig in on this. I'm not sure, Tim, if I was hearing perhaps a motion to amend to add firing in on this or not. I would be I think that'd be kind of cool if you wanted to. And I'm gonna stop because I forgot.
Okay, one more second on this list. Or actually, do you want to address that and then I'll get Colin?
Yeah, I'm happy to suggest that those be put back in. I have suggested them twice already in each iteration of the comment. I'm just pointing out that I will vote against these as they sit because
Okay, got
they do not contain the comments that I want to. So if you want or would enjoy amendment, I'll be happy to do so. Thank you.
Okay, let's get Kohler's and then we'll address that.
So mine is just a comment on what you get to look at, and we don't have a clean copy of this. If you look at some of the comments are even truncated because they're too long. I would ask that you please put a clean copy in when we're gonna do a vote, so we compare the two. I think you mentioned that too, you didn't know if it was back in there or not, so it's really hard to take a vote on this with so much red line and not knowing exactly how to think about it is.
Yeah,
Just a suggestion, please.
that's good feedback. And in the report, I do always link the document online where it's not truncated, where this is a PDF.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Just move forward. Okay,
Nicole,
go ahead.
I mean, maybe we should table this till the next meeting and work on Tim's suggestions. And give a clean copy. Yeah, I don't like not getting a clean copy either. And I just think that would be a way to, I mean, we've been working on this for months. Another month is not gonna make any difference.
I would consider that, but I would also consider that it's such a clean amendment that he's proposing that if he could add those two words in. I think it could be a friendly amendment, and if anyone feels uncomfortable about voting on it without a clean copy, then I'll take that as a rejection of trying to push this forward. So you'd like to go ahead and make an amendment?
Yeah. So, hang on a second. My amendment really is, and I don't have a pause.
Hey, point of order.
Go ahead.
Was that a move to table it?
I don't think it
I didn't
was.
make a motion.
I didn't hear a motion.
Okay, thank you.
So I would move that, in policy, what is it, 102? That. And I don't have a thought.
We know what we're talking about.
That, that added to the function of the board or the hiring of the CEO also includes the function of dismissal when needed.
We have a motion, a friendly amendment to the motion that we're currently discussing. Do we have any more discussion on this friendly amendment?
Do you have to second friendly amendment?
Yeah, I mean, so also, I'll just sort of say this sort of as a bit of a point of order, right, is that Nicole didn't personally make this amendment, the committee did, so I think in order for it to be friendly, the whole committee would have to vote on the friendliness, so it's probably best for him to just make this motion to amend and someone second.
Okay, any further discussion
On the amendment.
on the amendment? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is
Now,
unanimous.
so that sort of
Now it's amended.
amended the motion, so now the amended motion would be passed.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I've got some discussion, and it is that the full one isn't here, and we did have this problem before. And we did agree, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it earlier, Nicole, we did agree to have the full one in the package. I think we owe it to ourselves to have the full one in the package. And in order to do that, I think we have to table this. So I move that we table this till next month. We're not gonna make any further changes, folks. We're just gonna have the full thing in the package, and that's my motion.
If I could just suggest something, we'll have a break scheduled here in another 15 minutes. We could prepare clean, Janelle and I can prepare a clean version for you during that break, and you can review it at that time. I'll make you have time. But like,
I'm gonna second the table. I need more time.
So we have to vote on the motion to table, right? And that's how many percent?
Table.
It doesn't matter. Let's
Yeah,
vote and we'll see
yeah.
if we got it.
Yeah,
Okay, all in favor to table this, by saying aye?
it's unanimous.
And good work on the community policy.
I'll ask you one more question as relates to committee policies. The bylaw amendments, right? That were proposed. I don't think we've ever shared them other than the board. Is that something a member could ask for to see? They're in the report. It's a public document. I mean, these were proposed, they're not adopted, really, but I mean, one of them is about transparency. And I don't think I've had a member ask about that. So
I mean, that makes some sense. If you look at policy 108, this isn't something that's really covered in that, right? So since we're here and since you're considering it, it sounds like perhaps a motion to make those public, right, which is allowed under 108. Under 108, documents that are public include documents that the board chooses to be public that aren't otherwise covered under 108. You could make a motion that you would like to make those publicly available to the members. You could move to put them on the website, or you could just move to make them publicly available if any members request them, however you would like.
So I will make the motion that we make them publicly available to the member request. Without having to go through a whole.
108 request paperwork. Yes.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Go ahead.
All in favor?
And or if I could just add, just for staff clarification on what to make available, the proposed bylaws that we received from the member or any of the other supporting documents that were generated with it, what?
I think, yeah, the entire documented discussion, including proposed.
The memo I drafted.
Proposed amendments.
Mhm.
Your response to those and relevant information from committee policies. I don't think there's anything confidential in there. But like we've been informed, then I think any member should be allowed to see.
I just wanted to know
Okay.
where the line was.
Still good with that, Kohler, as a second?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I clarify what you mean by relevant information? For instance, we had a working document where we all said what we thought about it, but kind of going in.
No, what we published
Something
in
like
this
this.
meeting.
So what we published at this meeting, okay.
What we as
What we got to see. Okay, super.
The portion of the confidential board packet that went to the directors relevant to the bylaw amendments will be
Okay.
publicly available to members upon
Got it.
request without statement of purpose.
Which includes that background and analysis document that is so informative.
The one from Green.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you. So we had motion second. Thank you for letting me sort of clarify that, but.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll go ahead and entertain a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else from, Thank you. Onward, board action, item B, Finance and Audit Committee. Tim, what do you have for us?
Question.
Possible action on policy 103.
Right. So, it's the LPEA Finance Audit Committee report is in the packet. Of course, if there's questions on that, happy to try and answer them. Or happy to really resonate. Or at least it's very important to smooth running of finance audit committee along with the finance department. There were two recommendations that came out of this this FAQ last week. The first is there was a request to review policy 103, section 2.c.4 little c. which came up as a result of a authorization, acceptance of a line of credit facility that could be activated by the CEO or other designate during a emergency, fire, whatever, storms that cost more than we have available to recover from. And that brought up the context of to what extent is the CEO delegated to make non-budgeted expenditures, and is there a ceiling? Or should there be a ceiling? So wasn't the policy 103 ceiling was prohibitively small for utilization of that line of credit. So we made a recommendation to change that clause that I just mentioned in policy 103 to the CEO may make non-budgeted expenditures exceeding those set forth in the just prior section clause of that policy, which had that much smaller non-budgeted discretion, which in the judgment of the CEO are vital to affect unanticipated emergency maintenance or repairs in an amount not to exceed 20% of budgeted annual operating revenue and patronage capital fiscal year. Patronage capital in this context is already allocated rather than what we anticipate to come up. So that's a recommendation by the committee. It comes out of committee, so it's a motion. Second, it's open for questions. Kirsten?
Yeah, my difficulty with this is the amount that it's allowed to not exceed as 20%. It's a large amount. And since we do have an executive committee who can rally quickly in case of an emergency, need of maintenance or repairs. And I believe that we have the means to react quickly without giving unfettered access or unfettered to the CEO, that we give that CEO that much spending expense. My concern is magnified by the fact that we have a executive officer in our country who can call an emergency anytime they want to. And so that's what I worry about is, this CEO might not, but another CEO might say, hey, this is emergency. I could spend up to 20% of our money, and that's a lot. And that's what my concern is. I think we have the means with our executive, through our executive committee, to be able to respond quickly and let that go from there. That's mine. Thank you. So I will be voting against this proposal. Thank you.
So a couple of points. One, it's not unfettered. That's the point of a 20%.
Of the 20%, yes, sir.
It does fetter. The line of credit that we've already provided approval for the line of credit to be activated by the CEO, that total is 17.5 million. So there's another fetter, if you will. And this at 20% allows things to change based upon changes in need, as well as changes in due to inflation. So we spoke about this in the committee, and the committee felt very comfortable that this was a very reasonable approach. It was pointed out that many other co-ops within the state of Colorado have unlimited. They do not provide any, by and large, during an emergency. They say, if you gotta spend the money to do it, go do it, right? And it's, in this case, it's not really spending, it's actually taking on debt. This is sort of saying, well, maybe I'm a little off on that, but it is authorizing, in this case, up to that 20%, mostly through debt. We would not probably have that kind of money in our account to be able to spend. So I think the committee feels very comfortable on that. And it was debated and discussed. So David has. four.
Yeah. So I'm voting for it, and I'm voting for it because of a person in Washington DC who can do away with FEMA. In my past life, we go out to hurricane response all the way from Harvey to Sandy to Key West. And it was mutual aid because FEMA guaranteed that our crews would get paid. So what had happened is a municipal would call us. The first one that called would get the crews. If Chris needs to pick up the phone and call and say, I could pay your crews. Now, this is a phone call within hours. So if we have a major firestorm that comes through here and unfortunately other co-ops get impacted, it's whoever there's first with the cash if FEMA is not there. So that's why I will vote for this, is because it will protect our members from getting that mutual aid in case there's a catastrophic forest fire, et cetera, that we do need something with crews to come in, that there is a guarantee that this paycheck will come through. Because if there's no FEMA money, no guaranteed money, I know where I used to work, they're not gonna send any crews because our customers aren't gonna pay for it. The same thing here, if the members aren't gonna get reimbursed, why would I send my co-op crews to help you out? Or independent crews, or even, sometimes we would also see, for-profit crews, and those get tied up real quick too. And a for-profit, you better show them you can pay that bill. So I'm voting for it.
And
John?
More comments, yeah.
Yeah, I think David covered my point very well spoken. I would add in support of that point, an emergency is an emergency. You don't negotiate for the price of water when your house is on fire. We have to have enough trust in our leadership to be able to distinguish between an emergency and an urgency. And I'll be voting in support of it for the reasons he correctly identified in line. Thank you.
Dan, I think was next. Do you wanna jump in?
Just one, quick point, which is the current policy is unfettered. So if you look at the current language, so if you would like fetteredness, which I'm sure is not a word.
We don't need that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, the current policy has no limit. So I think we had a great discussion in FAC. We had it compared to the line of credit that the board already accepted. We want to go a little bit above that so that there was flexibility to David's point in an emergency. And so, I was very comfortable with the discussion, but I would say if you want some boundaries, then you would want to support this policy because the current policy has no limit.
And there's another staff person, just want to recognize because they followed it.
There's another control in place, and that's in the form of CFC. Chris won't be able to say, hey, there's a cat stuck in my tree, I've got an emergency, so I need to be able to draw 17.5 million. CFC, what we have done is we have authorized Chris and myself to be able to negotiate loan terms, the loan terms have not been established, so CFC is another level.
You have dual signature, right, above a certain limit. So even if you wanted to draw it for your cat, you need one other co-conspirator to execute that fraud.
Really need to be involved with that.
And fetteredness is a word.
Thank you.
I think Dan.
Yeah, I just wondered, we do have a line of credit, is it not large enough to cover this?
that's what the 17.5 million.
Right, so last month we discussed the need for that additional. It's specific to circumstance. But maybe Patrick, Dan is asking, what's the relationship between these two line of credits?
If I'm honest, in a real disaster, that would likely be a drop in the bucket. The current 25 million line of credit that we have is for liquidity. We use that, and right now we run our cash down to 4.5%. We looked at that, so we're using more of our cash for operating expenses. That 25 million provides us liquidity to, if you run into a minor bump in the road. If you run into a major bump, that's what this 17.5 is about, and this was recommended by CFC. And it's not going to address major capital expenditures that come down the road. It's to provide a bridge capital If you think about what would happen, a lot of members might be disrupted to where they can no longer pay their bill. There's a number of other nasty side effects that I'm probably not anticipating, but this is designed to help accommodate to get us through that period, to be able to structure greater financing if you.
Thank you. Bowler, there's somebody at this time, yeah, and just once again, I think if we're talking about changing the policy, I think we need the red line policy and clean one in here, so we can compare. We're referring back and forth to the other thing, but it's not there, so just a suggestion going forward. It's a good point, thank you. I will make sure, John.
Yeah, to that point, when I'm reading C for B and C, it says 0.25%. You're saying 20%, and I think we should have. So these are different numbers, 0.25% in what you're saying and having that red line versus a clean copy in it for the same reasons we just spoke during the.
You're right, if we had those in front of us, we could point out how that works, because we had the same discussion, right? And so the clause before it basically sets the authority of the B clause instead of the C, sets the authority of the CEO to exceed budget in a normal course of events by 0.25%. The current clause says, in an emergency, you don't have to abide by that. You can exceed that 0.25%. And that's where Chris made the very good point that essentially it becomes unfettered at that point. Spend whatever. Right? So we make this recommendation to change that, to put a limit, saying it's 20%. That's all you can in an emergency. I don't know if that helps you. Happy to, I'm sure we could come back next month with a clean copy for you to look at, and we can vote again on this, the will of the board. There isn't a motion, I would say. We need to, we can withdraw that. So I'm not sure, I think you were next.
No, I move to table this motion to next month, we can get it.
Sorry, I have a hard time.
I move to table this motion till next month, so we can get a clean copy of the entire policy 103, please.
Sorry.
And I really appreciate the discussion.
For a second.
Do you want to make?
Well, we need a second for.
Or not.
I'll second.
So we have that much. I guess we have to cut you off.
We have to do the table.
Any other discussion?
This is on the table. There's no discussion on the table. I think, Mr. Parliamentarian.
There is no discussion.
Okay,
So no more discussion. So this is a vote on the amendment.
This is a vote on tabling.
Pardon?
This is a vote on tabling.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
We're on tabling the current thing. Good clarification. So it's all in favor? Raise your hand.
1, 2, 6, 7 favor of table.
And opposed?
Opposed to tabling. 1. 5 opposed.
So the motion and no abstentions. Well, so
Motion is
motion
tabled.
ends. We'll bring it back next month with the full documentation.
and I really appreciate the education for everybody on this, and I did attend your meeting too, and I thought it was very helpful, but I just really appreciate you guys helping me out. Thank you.
No
I have
problem.
one more month to save my cat. Thanks.
Yeah, there you go, other than that, forget it.
Unfettered.
Feline is gone.
Pat's name.
Better.
So there is one more action that is recommended out of the FACs, so let's go on to the next one here. We discussed a power purchase agreement amendment. Executive session because it's with a specific customer. We weren't sure if there was a discussion specific to that member that should be held in confidence. Coming out of that executive session, and the discussion of the amendment to that power purchase agreement, we make a recommendation that amendment really changes one thing Well, two things. It changes the name of the company, like what the previous amendment or our previous contract was with. Because subsequently it's changed ownership since we passed that a while back. And this changes that name, and then it changes the expiration date of it, or amends it to extend that expiration date to be coincident with our exit with Tri-State. So because that particular contract is ending prior to our exit, and the customer, Tri-State and LPEA staff all agreed it would be wiser just to extend it to coincide with our exit. And then there would be another agreement which would not require Tri-State participation thereafter, right? So that's codified in a resolution, which is in your board packet 2025-08. Also, those amendments, specifics to them, are also in the board packet. I think in clean copies. And so out of the FAQ, we recommend that the board approve resolution 2025-08, executing the amendments to the Harvest and Tri-State agreements, which extend the expiration date of both agreements through March 31st, 2026. So that's the motion from the committee on the floor. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, Tim, just procedurally and agenda wise, we do have room for discussion of this if needed in executive session. And we have it actioned as results coming out of executive session. So if we want to hold off on this motion until after we have further discussion, we can do that. Because, I mean, otherwise the board needs to be comfortable with voting on this.
I don't think we can, if anyone wants to talk about the specific terms of the agreement, then we should go into executive session. If it's just to discuss the names of the parties,
right,
that's as far as we go, it should be fine. That's my understanding. So Kirsten, do you have a question within that?
So my point is, you call.
No, she's doing it.
Oh, sorry.
Take her some.
Okay, thank you.
You're good.
Did we take away your computer, Graham? He's doing all his work from his phone. Okay. Sorry, okay. So, so the resolution says we can say the name and we should say the name.
Because it's put him in.
So, it's just what we can't talk about is.
Can we maybe have just one conversation?
My understanding is we can say the name. And we will say the name because it's right here. It says Harvest Midstream owns.
In the resolution.
Exactly, it's in the resolution. So I just wanted to say that the only reason for executive would be if anybody has any questions about the term. That's what we just agreed upon. So I'm great with this. I just don't think you have to be as cautious. You seem to be kind of cautious about the name. And you don't have to be cautious about the name. Okay, got it.
It's in the resolution. Everything that I've just said is open for public discussion. And I prefaced it with, if we have specifics, then we should go. Any other comment? Any other questions? All right, call the vote then. All in favor of executing this amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution. Any opposed? Abstention. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for your patience with me.
Thank you, FAC. Tim.
I did have a question about the financials, but I see we have Matt Larson, so I'll just ask offline, and if it seems like a relevant point, then.
Okay, so a question about the report
Yeah.
financials, we can come back to that.
Yeah, then let's probably not even asking at this point. Let's go ahead and get attorney update from Matt, and then we'll take a short break as we move into executive session after that. Matt, can you hear us, and what do you have for us? We see you.
We're not paying for your time now, buddy.
Clock's not started.
We are, right?
Well, I'm taking notes.
Testing.
Mr.
Oh, calling in.
That's for us.
Oh,
Get your tape on.
Matt?
Testing, testing.
Well, he's coming in, can you do you?
You guys hear me now?
Oh, again, you can.
All right, apologies. There we go. Hi,
Hi.
I got promoted to be a panelist, so that was exciting. Nice to see you all. Just a couple of quick updates. I think this will be pretty brief. On the FERC side, settlements around tri-state rate case continue. There's another settlement conference tomorrow. Those discussions, remain in progress. The appeals, at the 10th Circuit are kind of working their way through. Nothing has been, some are in the briefing forum, some are, awaiting potential oral argument, but no real updates there. I do have one other update, but I think it's probably better for executive session. Before we do that, though, I could certainly take any questions about FERC items or appeal items or anything else.
Anything for Matt, open session? Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, Matt, I saw there's been a shift in the FERC commissioners and then the pending reduction in staff. What implications does that have just on timeline or process or, yeah.
Yeah, there's probably gonna be some changes at the commissioner level. The staff reductions that are going on, could potentially affect the processing timeline for cases and getting orders out and things like that. But the reality is, in terms of like the major FERC item that's up there in the form of the tri-state rate case, the way that that's being processed through settlement judge procedures, I don't think will be impacted. Those processes are very party driven, very applicant driven. There's a FERC role in it. But it's not as dependent on the workforce levels, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Matt before we move over into executive session? And we will take a little nature break on the way into executive session. That's motivating for you. All right, then I'll take a motion to move into executive session.
And for the record, the topics will be attorney update of FERC and related actions, power supply progress, confidential, and real estate update. We will not have item D as on the agenda in executive session since that's already been accomplished by the.
And for the record, who do we need to attend other than the board? Because it says we're supposed to clarify who do you want to attend other than the board.
The CEO can decide.
Yeah, CEO and relevant staff.
And relevant staff.
Yep.
Okay,
And our,
so this guy not?
don't think we need a security officer.
Thank you.
Unless the board's gonna.
All right, okay, thank you for the clarification. Kirsten moved and seconded, all in favor of moving into executive session, raise your hand and say aye. Okay, it's unanimous. And, we'll see you in executive session in 10 minutes.
So Chris,
Thank you.
Health and life.
All right, I think we're back. Back in public session. Thanks, everyone. And, all right, so I'm gonna ask if there's any action that we need to pursue coming out of executive session. I see Kirsten.
thank you. I move that we re-examine the functionality, security, and safety of LPEA facilities.
We have a motion from Kirsten.
Second.
We have a second from Rachel. Any discussion that we need to have on Kirsten's motion? Seeing none, let's vote on Kirsten's motion. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. That's unanimous. Say aye. I hope so. Move to adjourn. All right. Dan grabs my gavel, just, I don't have it. Okay, that's, I believe that's the only action we have coming out of executive session. We will move on to section 9 of the agenda, which is the reports section. Do you have anything for us, Graham?
Sorry, point of order, I need to go back. We said we would get back to Rachel's question about the finances before, that you needed to drop.
It was my question and
Nicole.
Sorry,
I was
sorry.
gonna talk to Patrick.
Okay.
And see if it's relevant.
You don't remember? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for keeping us on track, Kirsten. Graham, anything from you?
Just refer to my written report. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Graham on the attorney report? Then we'll move into director reports. Who wants to give any updates, or do any board members have questions they want to ask about those? I see Tim's hand.
Sorry, it took me a minute to get back to his.
Oh, okay. Attorney report.
So finalize and executed the purchase and sale. No. So just remind me that the board delegated that authority.
Yes, so that was part of the settlement authority to settle the lawsuit.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Director reports. Joe.
I had a question about the Western United.
Yes.
I was just reading, we spent 8.7 million year to date. Will we be getting any patronage capital or whatever it is from?
Yeah, we'll be getting our patronage capital.
Yeah, I'm just curious how much.
No, because the end of fiscal year is July 1st, and then they'll see how much patronage capital and then we'll vote on it. It's like we would here.
You know what
But
it's been in the past?
I'd have to look at Patrick for that. Patronage capital from Western.
From Western United.
It's in the 6 figures, it's significant.
It is.
Because we've been spending so much money.
But if you, in the report, they should have about 302 million this year, the first time ever over 300 million. With the tariff unknowns, they're looking at probably about 280 when we looked at the budget. Because they're being very conservative, because they actually went out and called other co-ops and did a little poll of how's your projects going. A lot of them are slowing down, and some of the customer member hookups, say a large commercial's coming into town or industrial, they're slowing down or not doing it because they're unknown too. So the meters aren't growing also, the best way to look at it. So I'm very impressed in that they took the time and went through that iteration. At the same time, your sales numbers are going to be at 280 million. You might have a 20-25% tariff. Most of the materials we use is copper, aluminum, steel, etc., and it's all imported. It might be manufactured in the United States. The raw materials have a tariff component. And just a FYI, I did put my name in the hat to be an executive, and they'll have a vote in August, so may or may not make it or not. So it's just FYI.
Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary.
Oh,
there you go.
it's a 4-year progression up to the president.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yeah, Rachel, what do you have for Graham?
Just curious what our plan is. I was looking through the tri-state announcements about their, was it their anticipated rate increases 6.3% or something next year, and then the 16 point something percent the year after. We're only going to be kind of impacted, I think, by that 6.3%.
Yeah, that's the only part that's public. The 6.3 they mentioned in their 10K.
Oh, so this is the current magazine.
No, what we circulated to you is beyond their anticipation. This year. Yes, we can talk about the 6%. They did disclose that in their SEC filings. That's all we can talk about.
And I'm not sure we have a plan for that, right? That will impact us temporarily, right? Over just the course of a very few months, and so the board will have to take a decision on how we handle that, how we tolerate it, how we either do or don't pass it through.
It is
Apologies, I missed you.
upcoming fact agenda.
That needs to be messaged carefully.
Yeah.
about a building, but.
Good with that, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you.
Kirsten?
Yeah, on the capital from, or patronage from WE, they retire much quicker too, right? Like we're maybe on a 19 or 20 year schedule. There is like each year they are.
Yeah.
Year?
2018, I think.
It's an eight.
Yeah, it's 2018.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Any other comments, questions about reports? Go ahead.
I have a question for CREA.
Yeah.
What is our membership commitment? Is it a rolling annual? And if so, I'm just thinking about this capital outlay they're about to make with the new building and, we've talked about our value, LPEA's value in CREA, and I just wasn't sure when that renewal is.
That's a good question. I don't know when the renewal is. It's an annual fee, but whether it's paid quarterly, I don't honestly know.
I can answer that one. It's paid quarterly. There are two components. There is the general membership, and then there is an add-on for the safety program. We opted out of that safety program, as folks will remember. They are invoicing us right now for that safety program, so it's a discussion that we'll have over the summer. But it is annual, so it's an annual commitment. We are paying our invoices for the general membership, committed to do that through the end of this calendar year.
Kirsten?
In my report, I just want to highlight that Tri-State's working on a HILT, a high impact load tariff. And something that we may want to consider. It's what they're thinking about it is for folks who have data centers coming in or crypto mining, if that still exists, coming in, that they're trying to put some stuff together now and in front of it so they can have that tariff. Of course, now they need to get their tariffs approved by FERC. We approve our tariffs, but it's a whole philosophy. And I think it may be helpful as we become independent to think about our own HILT, HILT. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping tabs on those things. Anything else on reports? Okay, anything else for, as we say, the good of the organization? I have one. Yeah. Since Dan mentioned it, we just had Dan's last vote as an LPEA board member. So I want to shake your hand. And I want to give you something.
All right.
I mean, we want to give you something. That's well,
better than a flag.
Way better than a big flag. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
There you are, sir. It's we'll find a place for that. Thanks everybody for your appreciation and thank you for your
great,
especially being my left-hand man over the course of the last couple of years, keeping me on track. I appreciate it very much.
Great. Well, thank you all, and it's been a pleasure to serve on this board. When I got on my first meeting, I didn't have a clue. They handed me 2 pages of acronyms.
Yeah.
My learning curve went straight up. Now it's maybe at a 45. Well, I appreciate it and hope I've done a good job as being a director in service to our community and members. And thank you all.
Yeah, you
Thank
too.
you, sir.
You too. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Wait.
Oh, sorry, not
I
meeting,
didn't
not
want to
adjourned.
steal Dan's thunder, but I was just gonna make a public announcement. The Iron Horse Classic is this weekend. If anyone's interested, I'm riding the team for the Southwest Grief Center, which supports families going through crisis or anyone actually who lost people. It's a fundraiser. And if you have any beloved people you want me to pedal up on my bike, yeah, let me know. And we put their names on their bikes and then they get to go on a ride. Yeah, and if you want to donate, it helps really good cause that's struggling immensely right now under federal cuts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess we have another meeting to go to. I would love to have all of you in attendance. If you can